Yes, Dr. Richardson, in her opening comments, was giving the sciences that support evolution, and she said developmental biology supports evolution because of vestigial organs, including gill slits and tails, while the baby is in the mother's womb. So she is using ontogeny recapitulates phylogeny. We've got it on tape. It is still in the textbooks, that's for certain. I have nearly all the textbooks, and it is in there. They are still teaching in many of the textbooks. Ontogeny recapitulates phylogeny. They will list evidences for evolution, and they will talk about embryonic development proving evolution. Similarities in a microscopic stage, of course, when the animal is smaller, it's tougher to see the differences, but it still doesn't prove they have a common ancestor. Similarities could easily prove a common creator. The idea that there are similarities in development and similarities in the adult stages, two bones in the wrist, does not prove a common ancestor. It proves a common creator. Both can argue that as their point, and it's a moot point. It's not part of the argument. Similarities have nothing to do with evolution or creation. Both are going to take that for evidence for their side.
Thank you. I'm not sure if we've completely covered this or not, but I'm going to come back to it. If you believe in creation, why go to the doctor? Either you believe or you don't. The laws of physics are always constant. Does this relate to, does faith in creationism relate to practice of medicine?
I would guess that question is for me. I definitely, okay, sure. I definitely believe in creation, and I certainly go to the doctor. I think the human body is extremely complex, and any complex mechanism can go bad. I worked at General Motors. I helped build trucks. I believe that General Motors builds trucks, but I'm certainly not against mechanics. They do break down. The belief in creation does not mean you can't. I don't understand any relation at all between belief in creation and not going to the doctor. I cannot see the logic in that. I'm sorry. Yes, I believe you ought to go to the doctor if you get sick. I have no problem with that.
I go to the doctor.
Okay.
Okay. You're next, or you're first up next then. Dr. Richardson, how does evolution explain development of the sexes and variety of species from one cell?
Development of the sexes. So they want to know about the origin of genders in reproduction.
How does evolution explain development of the sexes and variety of species from one cell?
Okay. Let's see, the theory of evolution takes us from simple cells to multiple cells, all of which undergo asexual reproduction. And when we get to the multi-celled organisms, we see the origins of, some of the single-celled organisms that are further derived do exchange gametic information, which we would consider the role of sexual reproduction. So evolution deals with the evolution of sex by saying that sexual reproduction increases the chances of variation in your genotype. Okay, every time you produce gametes that are half of your genome, and when these combine, genetic recombination is possible, allowing further variation in your genome. And variation is the stuff of evolution. So sexual reproduction is a key to allowing variation, which allows evolution by natural selection. Was that pretty much?
I would say that was definitely begging the question. That explains that once it works, it's useful and it works good, but it doesn't explain how it got to be that way at all. How do you go from asexual to sexual reproduction? There is no good answer to that by evolution. Sexual reproduction is, of course, a very inefficient way to produce offspring. The chances of how many things would have to be right in order for sexual reproduction to work? It'd be like your automobile. I could say, how many things have to be right for it to work? You would say, well, thousands. How many things have to be wrong for it not to work? any one of thousands of things. And sexual reproduction is so complex, it could not have arisen piece by piece by chance. It had to be designed and created. And there is no good evolutionary explanation. All the different single-celled animals have both types, asexual and sexual reproduction. And the idea that to say that it's here, therefore it must have evolved, is certainly begging the question. Yes, I agree it's here, but that to me says it must have been created. So again, both are going to use that evidence. I think the creation, though it does involve an unseen creator, definitely takes a lot of faith. And evolution would take even more faith to say, well, it works, so it had to get here somehow.
Then I guess my next question for you, to begin with, why isn't the ocean floor as old as predicted? The formula distance equals rate times time says so. Why isn't the ocean floor as old as predicted? The formula distance equals rate times time says so. You can pass on these if you wish.
Yeah, I don't think that question is put together the way the person was intending it to be. The sediments in the ocean definitely indicate a young age for the ocean. There's not enough sediment down there to indicate millions of years of accumulation. That's why the continental drift theory is so important to the evolutionary theory, because they have to develop some way of getting rid of ocean sediments because it simply is not there. I lived by the San Andreas Fault. I'm very familiar with the continental cracks in the place, and the Earth is shifting and twisting, but again, that does not prove it's been going on for millions of years. And similarities of shapes, Africa and South America would fit together. That does not prove they broke apart millions of years ago. I could say this building and the building across the street are oriented the same. That does not prove they broke apart and the blacktop oozed up between them. Similarity of shape is determined by the water level. If you raise the ocean 500 feet, Chicago becomes on the beach, and the whole Amazon jungle would be flooded, and that similarity of shape would disappear. So the ocean sediments are a real problem for the evolutionist. As far as the continents spreading, it may be that the Atlantic is getting wider. The only research that I'm familiar with that was done on that was the satellite where they bounced lasers from Europe and America for 8 years till the satellite finally fell out of parking orbit. They did not actually see any movement of the continents, so they attributed the maximum allowable error to atmospheric twinkle, 0.46 arc seconds, as the laser goes through the atmosphere, and said, well, they must have moved and we couldn't detect it. So there may be movement. I'm not saying there's not. But the idea of continental drift and ocean floors is very important to evolution because it gets rid of an embarrassing problem because there is not enough ocean sediments. As a creationist, I have no problem with that. The oceans are not billions of years old. That's why the sediment's not very thick.
Thank you. Dr. Richardson?
Well, I can account for an absence of sediments in the ocean by the theory of continental drift.
Which is?
Which is that the continents float on tectonic plates and that the continent of North America is drifting closer to the continent of Asia. The Atlantic Ocean is spreading. We see seafloor spreading in the Atlantic Ocean. Seafloor spreading is accompanied by volcanic activity, things we can just go down and look at. It's not real elaborate bouncing satellites or anything. We just measure distances. And we see seafloor spreading in the Atlantic Ocean. The Pacific Ocean is considered much more ancient. It's the ocean that surrounded Pangaea 200 million years ago when the continents formed the supercontinent.